Good afternoon, and welcome to this fall's end of the semester concert by the Great Woods Symphony Orchestra. I'm Jonathan Millen, the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs here at Wheaton College, and I'm thrilled to be here today, and even more pleased to see so many members of the community, students, faculty, and staff, as well as broader members from the community in attendance here today. Indeed, the arts serve as a perfect bridge between institutions of higher education and the publics that we serve. Through the arts, we can see, and in today's case, hear, the practical value of a liberal education in action. Even more, as the orchestra is comprised of Wheaton students, faculty, and members of the public, together we have created a deep and genuine learning environment for all. And on a personal note, today's concert serves as a bookend for me as my first semester comes to a close. One of my first Wheaton experiences was the Symphony Under the Stars concert this last June by the Great Woods Symphony Orchestra. I could not have wished for a better welcome to this wonderful institution and the neighborhood in which it resides. Since then, I've enjoyed 2 art exhibitions, Into the Light and Shelter, which is still running across the hall in the Beard and Wheel galleries, a student performance of Lysistrata, as well as the Wheaton College Dance Company's production of Intertwined right here in this theater. Bless you. And most recently, I was mesmerized by the Holiday Vespers concert featuring our choral and chamber singers. The arts are indeed alive and well here at Wheaton College and throughout this community. And this afternoon's concert promises to be a perfect ending to a rich calendar of fall events. I hope you will continue to join us on campus for future performances, presentations, and exhibitions. Today's program is dedicated to the memory of Professor Jonathan Walsh, a member of the Wheaton College faculty. And it is now my honor to invite Professor Thomasina Gabrielle, Professor of Italian Studies, to share some words regarding Professor Walsh's legacy. Thank you, enjoy the concert, and happy holidays.
It's my pleasure to offer this tribute to Jonathan Walsh, who was 2 doors down from me for most of the time that he was at Wheaton, right here in Manili. Jonathan Walsh taught French at Wheaton College from 1994 until his passing over 1 year ago. A specialist in literature of the Enlightenment and in post-colonial fiction in French, Jonathan evinced an unwavering love for his vocation. Much of his wide-ranging scholarship focused on Enlightenment fiction, such as his monograph, Abbé Prévost's d'Histoire du Grec, forgive my French, Figures of Authority on Trial. He also published numerous articles and translations. Jonathan reveled in sharing the richness of French culture and its contributions to the world of art and thought through films, novels, and essays. He believed that by mastering the language, one could gain access to an alternate universe of creativity and intellect. His dedication to nurturing a transformative experience for his students is considered one of the most profound contributions to Wheaton College. For several years, Jonathan drove a van load of students to Quebec just to get them more familiar with French-speaking culture. He also initiated and hosted an annual cabaret where students and faculty sang, acted, or recited, all in French. We knew Jonathan at Wheaton as a generous colleague and a beloved teacher. Off campus, he was a fine guitarist, keyboardist, singer, and songwriter. To others, he was a sailor and the captain of his boat, Hatuna. We dedicate this concert to his memory. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to the concert this afternoon. The first piece we're going to play is a very famous piece by Maurice Ravel called The Pavane pour un enfant d'enfant. I don't know how to pronounce that exactly. It's a very famous, it's a lovely, very sort of sad and tragic piece that's written in memory of someone, and we're going to dedicate it expressly to Jonathan, but as you listen, we ask you to maybe think about dedicating it to someone you might have lost this last year. This is a slow, sad piece, but there are moments of great beauty. And so for me, it's a great way to reflect upon the reality of losing someone, but also celebrating their life in a very rich and joyous and intimate way. So we hope you enjoy the Pavane by Ravel. going to play is also written for a smaller orchestra. We had 2 violins break in rehearsal today, so I think yeah, no, they're all fine now. So some gremlins works or something like that. But only good vibes from now on. Many of you probably have never heard of the composer we're about to perform, Melanie Bonny. She's a French composer from the life sort of straddled the 19th and early 20th centuries. She studied with some of the greatest French composers that you might know. She wrote a lot of piano and chamber music, and she arranged this piece. Originally it was for, I think, 2 pianos. She arranged it for a small orchestra. It's a set of waltzes called Suite en forme de valse. So it's basically 4 waltzes stuffed into 3 movements. You're a pretty good composer if you can do that. The second movement has 2 little waltzes in it, so that's how it works. These are tender, intimate, really lovely pieces. They're very, very difficult to do because the smaller the orchestra, the quieter the dynamics, the more subtlety the music requires to bring to life. So for my ears, this is sort of one sort of sound of French music is this kind of gracefulness and sort of intimacy that we get in this piece, in both the harmonies that are used, but also the orchestration. So it's a really lovely piece. It's very, very beautiful and rarely performed. So we're really happy to perform the Suite en forme de valse by Melanie Bonny. The next 4 pieces in the program will feature the full symphonic orchestra, woodwinds, brass, percussion, piano, etc., strings as well. This is 2 movements from a suite of incidental music by the French composer Bizet. He is the composer of the opera Carmen, and he's probably written a lot of the famous classical music pieces you might know. This is actually, you might recognize a couple of the tunes that we're going to be playing in these 2 movements from the suite. Particularly the last one, the farandole, which for some reason has become sort of a staple of holiday orchestra concerts. I don't know why there's no sleigh bells in it, but it tends to be played sometimes in the holiday season. It's interesting, it actually features an instrument we don't usually get to have in the orchestra, and that's saxophone. Now, the French saxophone tradition is really important. It's the most famous classical saxophonists come from France and study in France. And so we have A.J. Amayo, who's going to be joining us for this particular piece to play a wonderful saxophone solo in this first moment. Yeah, it's going to be great. We don't get a chance to have a saxophone around, so 2 movements. This is really wonderful, and you may recognize some of the themes. I hope you do. So this is the 2 movements from the suite sur la Lésienne by Bizet. Anybody recognize that last tune? You'll recognize it from now on because you heard it like 1,500 times. It's really fast. It's really hard to play. The woodwinds in particular, everybody had a ton of practice, and it's such a fun piece. So the next piece we're going to play is very different in character. It actually was originally written in the 17th century, but it was written for four instruments. Two violins and then essentially sort of I should talk to the mic. Two violins and then sort of a precursor for the cello called the gamba and the harpsichord. And in the middle part of the 20th century, the French composer Darius Milhaud decided to go back into French music history and arrange that piece. Exploded up for full symphonic orchestra. So what you're going to hear is a piece of music from the Baroque period that was written in the 20th century. Essentially, it was expanded out. So he's taken these tiny little, it's a wonderful little piece, but it's just for a couple of instruments, and he used his creativity to kind of reimagine it in this big symphonic format. So there are two movements that are linked with just a quick pause, the introduction or overture and allegro, originally by François Couperin, and then arranged and expanded upon by Darius Milhaud. We hope you enjoy it. So Baroque music is based upon sort of like the idea of a lot of Baroque music, what we just heard, is one melody that's kind of spun out again and again in different keys by different instruments at the same time. It's kind of like, if you ever sang a round, like row, row, row your boat, essentially. This is what you just heard is basically row, row your boat on steroids. It's the same two melody, but again, everyone has it in a different time and in a different, sometimes a different speed and in different keys, and it all comes together at the end. So it's like a forest that you have a map to. But if it sounded complex, it is. And it'd be interesting if you went back home and tried to check out the original version of that piece. It obviously sounds completely different. It's much quieter, right? But Neo just expanded it out. So it's not a very well-known piece of French orchestral music, but what we're about to play really is. It's one of the most famous pieces of French music, and also one of the most famous pieces of classical music. It's Saint-Saëns' Dance Macabre. And this is a wonderful piece. It's called a symphonic poem, so it's meant to tell a story through music. And it's based upon this European legend that on Halloween, the devil basically grabs his fiddle and plays, and the dead rise out of their grave, and they dance. So that is what this piece is about. And the Saint-Saëns brings this to life in a couple of ways. First of all, he has a violin soloist, who is our faculty section leader, Professor Ethan Wood, who will be playing. Wonderful solo. It's going to be great. And the composer actually asks the violinist to mistune their violin, so that the first thing you hear the violinist play are these two notes that sound very distant, very jarring. And the notes that they're playing, he asked the violinist to play, are an E and an A and an E flat, and they are an interval, space between two notes, called a tritone, and that was traditionally called diabolos musica, or the devil's interval, because it's so dissonant sounding. So the first thing you're going to hear is going to be like, but I trust you, it's exactly supposed to sound like that. And it's supposed to sound, no offense Ethan, but you're supposed to be the devil. So basically this melody, the melody sort of, the violinist plays and it kind of summons the orchestra to come in and join this wonderful tune. It gets louder and louder and louder. Then in the middle, the orchestra, something totally switches, and the orchestra plays a traditional piece of Gregorian chant called the Dies Irae, which was the traditional chant that would have been sung in the Catholic Church in France at a Mass for the Dead, or a Requiem Mass. But actually, you'd have to be a real, like, Roman Catholic nerd to get this, or maybe you're just French. But the cool thing is that he actually puts it in a major key. So it's sort of like a way of him saying when the devil, or when the devil calls an orchestra to play a song for the dead, it's joyous because, you know, etc. And so that's really cool. And then at the very end, it builds up. You're going to actually hear the xylophone play. And when you hear the xylophone, it's made of wood. You're supposed to hear that like the bones jingling. So when you hear the xylophone play, that's how you have to think about sort of the rattling of bones. It's really cool. And then finally, it builds up, and then it just stops suddenly. Where you can sort of sense the devil kind of trying to get the orchestra or the people to go back in their graves for now. And then it suddenly stops because morning comes. And you're going to hear the rooster crow in the oboe. And that's sort of a call that everyone's back in their graves. And then the piece ends very quietly. So that's the story. It's about 7 or 8 minutes long. It's really famous. You'll probably recognize it. Super, super fun. And it features our faculty section there, Ethan Wood, on violin. So you're really going to enjoy this one. piece of the program is even more famous than that one. And if you don't think you know it, you're wrong because you know it. So when you hear it, especially at the end, it's the famous Orpheus in the Underworld Overture. And it is a wonderful sort of overture to the world. It's essentially opera, comic opera. If you know the story about Orpheus having to go back to the underworld to save Eurydice, there's a little sort of difference here. It's sort of a comic opera. So in Offenbach's version of the opera, Orpheus isn't the son of Apollo. I think it is instead a violinist. So in this piece, you're also going to hear a solo by Professor Wheaton Wood. And this doesn't really tell the story per se, but it does have multiple different sections. It's got a lovely couple of little dances. It's got really fun little parts. It's almost like an entire miniature opera in terms of all the different characters it has. But it finishes with the famous can-can, which you will definitely recognize. And this piece became a real favorite of the Moulin Rouge and the other cabarets in Paris at the end of the 19th century, and became used for their high-kicking can-can dance that you probably have seen on TV, etc. So you're going to recognize that when you hear it. Now, before we play this last piece, I did want to recognize the work of not just Professor Ethan Wood, but also our other 3 faculty section leaders who work with the students and with the orchestra for an hour every week, really working on the parts in a sort of granular way, and then we come together and put the orchestra together in that second hour. So. This orchestra is sort of like a football team. I might be the head coach, but we all know there's no football team without an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator and a kicking coach, etc. So without these folks, we would not have the orchestra, and we rely upon them to teach our students and to work with the community members in the orchestra. So you've already heard about Professor Ethan Wood, and you heard him play. You're going to have Adrienne Teller play. You're going to hear her play a wonderful solo in this piece as well. So thank you very much. Thank you for hard work next week. Violist and also violinist John Battles back in here. Moises Carrasco, our bass section leader. So we're happy to have them do so much work with the orchestra. If I'm the bus driver, they're the wheels on the bus, so to speak, musical metaphor. So you're going to really enjoy this piece. It's a wonderful, wonderful, fun piece. You're going to recognize it right away. So it's the Orpheus in the Underworld Overture.